Hey guys, Loot Wizard here with a new Soulforge video. It is Monday, so we have new stuff here, new troop that came out, and we have all new stuff in the Soulforge. We have new event going on, so we're going to go through and check all this stuff out as usual. I like to start with the weapons, and there's a few good things in here this week. So, starting here at the top, this Ankh of Nefertani. This is an important weapon for crafting the Dusk Bringer weapon. And I scroll down here, Duskbringer. I have two weapons, but this week the Ankh is available to craft, and I'm going to go ahead and craft it so I can go ahead and craft the Duskbringer. Now, the Duskbringer is kind of like the kind of a less powerful Dawnbringer. Deals damage to all enemies, boosted by purple allies and enemies, deathmark all enemies, and then if there's 13 or more brown gems, gain 2 magic. So, it's a decent weapon, and just from looking at it, I think it is, and I'll be able to test it out more once I own it, because now I can craft my final weapon to craft this weapon. So that's here in the Forge this week. It's only 300 diamonds, so definitely if you're trying to get that Duskbringer weapon, go ahead and craft the Ankh. Even if you don't have the other two yet, at least you'll have this one. And moving on, then we have Fire and Ice. This weapon is a decent weapon, does damage to all enemies, and gives 2 life to all allies. And that's, pretty decent. It also has Flaming here in its the upgrade, which is always something that's good because there are certain classes in the game that once you get them to level 100, they have a talent which allows you to get triple damage, skull damage on burning enemies, and flaming will actually burn the first enemy. So some of these weapons, there's other weapons that are, you can have that flaming on it too. Just pointing that out that this one also has that. It'd be kind of weird if it didn't, because the weapon is called Fire and Ice, so if it didn't burn an enemy, I would be kind of like, what's going on there? But it does, so that's good. Moving on here down the list, we have Doomed Blade this week, which is a really good doomed weapon. Deals damage, spell damage to all enemies, and then it will transform red gems to doom skulls. And if there's an enemy, if the enemy has a doom, create 5 more doom skulls, and then it gains 3 mana for each blue enemy. 18 mana cost, blue. Very powerful weapon, so I would definitely recommend here getting this weapon if you have the diamonds to spare. This thing is equivalent to a Mythic in my opinion, and for 900 diamonds, it is kind of a steal at that price, because a Legendary costs 800 diamonds, a Mythic costs 4,000 to craft, and this thing is only 900 diamonds, so I definitely recommend getting the Doomed Blade. And we got some mana generating weapons here, nothing really amazing, so I'm going to skip over those. But really the highlights for weapons is the Doomed Blade and Fire and Ice and this Ankh here. Those are really kind of the highlights this week for that. I'm going to say Doomed Blade is probably the best thing to go for. Way better than Fire and Ice. And so that's pretty much it there. Let's head over to troops, and I'm going to skip over the Summoning Stones. I already kind of peeked in there. Took a little peek, and I didn't really see anything that was like super amazing that I wanted to recommend, so I'm going to pass over those, and we're going to go straight to legendaries and mythics. Now, Behemoth is a pretty good legendary early on in the game. I think it loses some of its power later, like mid to end game, but it is a low mana cost of 14, and it deals damage to all enemies, destroys 12 gems. And the good thing about that is this 12 gems that it destroys is not based on your current magic. So if you get this this card early on in the game, your first couple hundred levels, you're really gonna like it, because it'll do less spell damage than what you're seeing here, but it's always gonna destroy those 12 gems, and so that's really good mana generation for early on in the game. If you do have enough arcane trait stones, you can fully trait this thing to gain 10 life on 4 or 5 matches, which is kind of significant, especially earlier on in the game. So pretty good legendary there. I wouldn't say it's worth crafting for the 800 diamonds, but definitely a pretty decent legendary troop to get in keys. Now, for another legendary we have is Hindel Frost Crown. It's okay. It's a giant legendary, but nothing really super amazing about it, other than it has some freeze ability and it summons a giant troop, and there are some pretty good giants, so Allows all giant allies to gain 2 life and magic on a 4 or 5 gem match. So this thing really shines, I guess, when you have it with the trolls. And there's a few, there's actually quite a few trolls that are giants. And if you start looping mana with it, it can add a lot of magic to those other allies because of this trait. Other than that, I don't really use it too often. And we have the Widow Queen as a legendary, not really that great. Then we have Glaceon. Glaceon is one of those legendary troops that I would probably put in the category of a legendary that is good enough to craft. And this thing it's a little weaker earlier on in the game because it doesn't have much life. And if you don't get enough connections with the Doom Skulls, and if that's used against this troop early on, you'll take a lot of damage, especially if you do not have the second trait unlocked, because that'll reduce damage from skulls by 65%. It is a high cost of mana. It's 20, which is really high for a legendary troop, but this thing will transform yellow gems to blue, and it transforms red gems to Doom Skulls, and then it freezes the strongest enemy. So Doom Skulls are the really, really powerful in the game, so that's what I'm going to say. Glaceon is a really, really strong legendary. And so that's a possible craft right there. And as far as the most powerful legendaries this week in order, I would say Glaceon takes number 1 for sure. And then Behemoth number 2, Hindle Frostcrown 3, and Widow Queen in very last place. That's how I would rank the legendary troops this week. Now, moving on to the mythic troops here, we have the Queen Aurora, we have Ubastet, and we have the High King Irongut, and we have the Scourge of Honor. Now, right away, the High King Irongut is going to be, in my opinion, the best mythic troop to craft this week. This thing is great. If you don't have it already, it's going to be useful in a lot of different events, and there are ways to get its attack to 100. This number right here with the 2 swords crossing is your attack damage with this troop, and if you can get that to 100, this thing will have a 100% chance to devour, because it has a chance here devour equal to your attack, has a chance to devour them equal to your attack, and then it gains an extra turn. So this troop is really, really good. And once, like right here, so I have a 43% chance to attack, to devour a troop as a default on this troop. But if I'm successful devouring an enemy troop, that will probably get very high, if not over 100, just from devouring, because when you devour a troop, you gain its stats. A lot of its stats. So you're going to increase your attack, your armor, and your life by devouring an enemy troop. And so this kind of has a great increasing chance with its ability, because once you devour, then okay, if it's over 100% or over 100 attack, then it's over 100%, and then you can just keep devouring with it. There are a lot of troops, though. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. There are, a good number of troops in the game that are immune to devour, so you will need to curse them before this troop can devour them. But anyway, that's number 1 for the mythics, and the other ones really are not that good in my opinion. Ubastet is kind of powerful if you use it with certain troops. It does have a lethal damage to it, but it has diminishing attack power, because it'll deal spell damage to 2 weakest enemies, boosted by all ally and enemy attack. If one of the enemy dies, then kill the other one. So it has a lethal kill here, but as you can see, it will deal damage to enemies boosted by all ally and enemy attack. So once it kills 1 or 2 enemies, it will have less, enemies on the board to get its attack boosted by. So there is some kind of diminishing power here. The more enemies you kill, the weaker it gets. So it's not super fantastic in that sense, but in certain situations, Ubastet is powerful. Scourge of Honor is, it's okay, but it feels more like a legendary to me than a mythic. Has a 22 mana cost. It deals true damage to all enemies, gains 2 mana back for each cursed or diseased enemy, its traits. The final trait here will curse and disease a random enemy when matching 4 or more gems. Now, if you compare something like this, there are a couple of legendary troops that do deal true damage to all enemies like this, and they're very similar in spell damage to this, so that's why I said it feels more like a legendary to me than a mythic. But it's certainly better, in my opinion, than Queen Aurora, because Queen Aurora, it's a good support troop, but it gives allies life and barrier, and creates some gems. So I guess it's a mana generator as well as a giving life to allies and barrier. But if all you're doing is defense, you're not really gonna win. So you do need some attack. So I always see some of those support troops as being kind of secondary to damage troops. So how I would rank these mythics this week is High King Irongut is number 1. And probably Ubestet's number 2, 3 is Scourge of Honor, and finally in 4th place is Queen Aurora. And that's my opinion on the legendary and mythic troops this week. Let's go over and check out the new troop here. We have this guy. So we're going to go in here. We're going to check him out. Frozen Shield Breaker. It's an ultra rare troop. We get an Arcane Shield trait stone for 300 glory every time that we go through here. So sometimes I buy enough to get mythic, sometimes I don't. But you can get arcane trait stones by doing this, which is really one of the easiest ways to do it. You just save up enough glory and you can purchase them once a week like this. So I'm just going to get a few of these, but we're going to look at its ability here. Frozen Aura is its ability name. It will curse and freeze an enemy, then it deals 25 damage, boosted by blue gems. And the boost ratio is 3-to-1, so a third of the blue gems on the board will be really added to that spell damage. So nothing really amazing. But it is one of these troops that has a trait, creates a blue mana potion when I take skull damage. That's kind of interesting. But nothing really that crazy awesome. So I'm going to grab that troop there, and then we're going to go over and check out the event. I've already been playing around with it a little bit. I got a medal for it. We have 160% skull and spell damage for this event, so you can go either way. We also have Guild Wars going on this week, as well as this Melting Point event. We also have sieges later in about 3.5 days. But you guys already know pretty much what Guild Wars is all about, and so I'm not going to really go into that in this video. We're just going to be covering this Melting Point event, and yeah, so let's get right in here. This is the team that I'm going to recommend, I guess, because, there's other things. So really what we're restricted to this week is dwarf troops, and there aren't like a crazy amount of great dwarf troops. So I'm just going to point out a couple of them that I think are good. Stonehammer is great for mana generation and defense. But like I said earlier, if all you're doing is defense, you're not going to win. King Bloodhammer is great for both spell and skull damage. So he's a good option. King Highforge here is good for allowing dwarf allies to start with 50% mana. As well as it'll stun and do spell damage to the last 2 enemies. It'll also summon a random dwarf if there's a spot available for that. Tink Steam Whistle is good, and I will be using this in my chosen team. But this thing gives armor and life to all allies boosted by red gems. And it also, if you have it fully traded, it will conjure an Electro Storm when your turn begins. And Electro Storm is more red and yellow gems on the board, so that's what we're going to be focusing on in my team. Gimlet Stormbrew starts with full mana and it'll transform all green gems to brown. That might be something to use. Lady Ironbeard is a good troop if you want to snipe, and if your armor is greater than the enemy, it will deal triple spell damage, and that might be really good for this event because we're doing already 160% extra spell damage. Other than that, there really isn't a crazy amount of great troops here. We have a few mana generators of note, which is Deep Borer and Excavator, which you will be seeing me use the Excavator along with my team. Now, Moya Cragheart is also something to take note of. This thing will do a little bit of spell damage, but it will convert all green gems to Doom Skulls, and since we are also going to be doing an extra 160% skull damage. Moya Craig Heart will also be a good troop to look into using. Other than that, weapons is pretty much, there's a lot of choices for weapons. You can do anything from spell to skull damage, and there's lots of options in here. So you can, we're going to have, plenty of options. But I'm going with a particular team idea here, and that is I am using the Summer's Fury weapon. I'm using the Excavator troop, which will be mana generating here. Destroy a column, create 5 red gems boosted by brown gems destroyed. And then we have King Highforge here for a little bit of extra spell damage, as well as allowing all my dwarf allies to start with 50% mana. And if one or two of my troops dies, I can summon another dwarf troop with this one. Finally, in last place, we have Tink Steam Whistle, which is going to be keeping my troops alive by giving them armor and life every single time I cast it, if I choose to do that. But the other thing is really there for its passive ability of Conjuring Electrostorm every single turn, which is going to be giving me more red and more yellow on the board. And the red is going to be very important because this weapon that I'm using, Summer's Fury, will be doing spell damage to all enemies, and it will create 6 red gems. So if there's more red gems on the board, I have more potential to loop with this weapon. And again, we're going to be doing 160% spell damage. So if we're looping with this, we're going to be able to cycle through a lot of spell damage. And the other thing that's awesome about this weapon is that it has flaming. So if we go to upgrade weapon, you can take a look, and if you have this upgraded, it will burn the first enemy every time that you cast it. And it also Fury Fires the first enemy. But burning the enemy is really important with this setup because I am using this dwarf class, which is called the Slayer. And if you do have this class fully traded all the way to 100, or not traded, but leveled up to 100, and you have this talent down here selected, Fireblade, you'll deal triple skull damage to burning enemies. So we have a weapon that's going to be burning enemies, the first enemy. And then I also have a class with this talent selected, which is going to be giving me triple skull damage to burning enemies. And we're already, without an enemy burning, we're going to be doing 160% skull damage already. But now, if that enemy is burning, and we're going to be doing triple. So I don't even know how it's going to be calculated. It should maybe be doing triple to 160% skull damage. I don't know. I don't know how that's calculated, but I think that's going to be a really powerful combination. And the other thing is, this class will become enraged at 4 or 5 gem matches. And when you're enraged, you're doing 50%, I believe it's 50% extra, and you also become enraged when an enemy dies. So I believe when you're enraged, you do an extra 50% damage to skull damage to that troop that you hit. Also, being enraged bypasses the traits on it completely. So if that enemy troop is let's see here. Yeah, if an enemy troop like this has a reduction of damage from skulls by 50%, if my class here is enraged and I attack it, it's going to bypass that completely, and it will ignore the 50% reduction from skulls, and it's just going to hit it like really hard. So I really think that this is a great combination for this event. And for banner, I'm going double red. I think that's pretty obvious because we want to get a lot of red going to loop. So I've already been using it, and it's been working real good. So I'm going to go in here and do a couple battles and just show you what I've been doing. But down here at the bottom, this is our Electrostorm. Red and yellow gems fall more than other colors. That is fantastic. Now, the other thing we have is this Excavator troop here, which is a little bit of our mana generator. It's going to create red gems. So it's going to destroy a column that we select, and we should select one that has brown gems in it. Like this one has 3 brown gems. So for each brown gem, it's going to create 2 red ones. So we have 3 brown gems here in this column. So it's going to create 6 red gems plus the 5. So we're going to create 11 red gems by casting this. and that should give me, it got that full immediately, so we're going to cast that, and I'm doing 117 spell damage, and right there, I didn't even need to hit the thing with a skull, because just the combination is so powerful. But if you have a skull connection after that first cast, then you can use it, and that first enemy should be on fire because of because of that whole flaming, burning thing here. So like right here, this one is now burning. We're going to hit it, and just there's absolutely no chance of it surviving. So, and the great thing about Summer's Fury is it's a weapon that you get, I think, pretty early on in the game. It's not something that's like locked behind a paywall or some event. Like, this is a very, very obtainable weapon. And then the only things in here that are really like legendary or a little unique is the King Highforge and Ting Steam Whistle. But honestly, you can make this team work without those two. You can still use the Slayer class and have that up there, and use the Excavator and still make it work. And if you don't have the Slayer class, but you have a different one leveled up to 100 that has that Fireblade talent, because you have Dragon Guard has it too. There's a couple other classes in here that have that ability, and as long as you have one class that has that, you can combine it with the Summer's Fury weapon and still do a lot of damage in this event. So, in Excavator, that troop is, I think, pretty common. So, you shouldn't have too much trouble putting those two together. And there we go. We got that fully powered up. And, I mean, like, everything is just dying, whether it's from the spell damage or the skull damage. So, I really think this is a good team to use for this event. It's the one I'm going to be using. And, yeah, so that's pretty much it for today's Soulforge video this week. And there's a little bit going on with the Guild Wars. We got actually like 3 different things going on this week, so it's kind of one of those weeks where we got 3 different things we got to juggle the whole week of what we're doing here. But yeah, that's the Soulforge video for you guys this week. Hope you guys enjoyed that and got something out of it. I appreciate you guys a lot, and I'll catch you on the next video. Later.